For decades, we've been told that we should be eating less saturated fat. But as always in nutrition, the reality is far from straightforward, and there's a divide amongst experts as to whether saturates are harmful. In February 2020, several nutrition scientists wrote an open letter to the US Departments of Agriculture and Health and Social Services. They claimed that there's no strong evidence that the upper limit on saturated fat will prevent cardiovascular disease, and they called for a removal of this limit. The controversy began in the late 1960s when British nutrition scientist John Yudkin demonstrated a link between sugar intake and heart disease, which he outlined in his now famous book, Pure, White and Deadly. A 2016 paper published in JAMA Internal Medicine claimed that the sugar industry pushed to shift the blame to fat, which trickled down to the mainstream about the dangers of fat and saturates. Fat blaming was further exacerbated by the 7 countries study led by Ancel Keys, which illustrated a correlation between dietary fat and heart disease in 7 nations. However, it was later revealed that the study looked at not 7, but 22 countries. The other 15 were omitted. Keys only reported the correlations that supported his hypothesis. The huge amount of research since is varied. Some corroborates Keys' hypothesis, but not all. For example, a 2017 meta-analysis demonstrated that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturates had no effect on heart disease. So, are saturates as deadly as food policy indicates? Probably not, but I'm reluctant to say it's okay to regularly consume large amounts. High intakes are correlated with certain risk markers for heart disease, but I'm not sure that dietary policy in the 2020s should focus on reducing saturated fat. My point here is not to say that eating loads of saturated fat is safe, but rather that the cause of metabolic disease are broad. Picking on a single factor and converting it to nutrition policy is far too simplistic. There certainly shouldn't be any absolute recommendation, such as limiting your intake of saturated fat to 10% of total energy. The saturated fat controversy is another example of humans liking simple answers to complex issues.